Hi learners, hi children, hi parents, parents of grade 7, 8 and 9. If you are watching me, I'll urge you to click the subscribe button so that whenever I post a lesson, it reflects from your end. My lessons are educative for learners across all the levels, especially from grade 4 to grade 9. As always, feel welcome. We are having English, grade 7, the strand reading, substrand, dilemma, narratives. We have done other narratives before. Just recently, we did Ogre narratives. Today, we are doing dilemma narratives, which is the last narrative in grade 7. Now, by the end of this lesson, you as a learner, you are expected to be able to identify the characteristics of dilemma narratives. Number 2, relate the experiences in dilemma narratives to real life situations. So as the lesson begins, be attentive and take note of the same. Now, what is a dilemma narrative? Before we answer that, let us ask ourselves, what is a dilemma? I guess you have always been faced with a difficult situation, a situation that required you to choose between 2 or more alternatives. That is the situation you want to say you were in a dilemma. And I guess you have heard people say that I was left in a dilemma. Let me take you back to the story of the greedy hyena. I hope you have heard of the greedy hyena who was walking and then it reached at a crossroad and there was a smell emanating from both sides of the road and he couldn't decide which side of the road to take. So he was walking and then at a crossroad where there were 2 paths, one to the left side, the other to the right side. If he took the left one, the smell became more on the other side. So he was left now. Do I take the left or I go the right way? That is the kind of a story we want to talk of today. Dilemma narratives. A narrative that leaves main character with choices to make. Now, let us find what is a dilemma narratives. Say these are narratives. These are narrative where the main character faces a tough choice, or a narrative where main character has to make a tough choice. What are the characteristics of dilemma narratives? Number 1 characteristic from the definition is saying main character has to make a tough choice. Number 2, none of the choice is easy. easy to make. None of the choice is easy to make. Number 3, it has a closing formula. What is a closing formula? A closing formula is a statement that marks the end of the story. What makes the closing formula of dilemma narratives different from other narratives? What makes dilemma narrative closing formula different is that the closing formula points out the dilemma. So it has a closing formula which points out the dilemma. The closing formula points out the dilemma. Now, well, you need to understand that most of these stories have opening formula and closing formula. Examples of opening formula is once upon a time, a long time ago. So statements like that, phrases like that are called opening formula. Closing formula on the other end means an example. That is the end of my story. Or someone can say end of the story. I guess you have taken note of the same. But the closing formula of dilemma narratives is different because that statement in the last sentence points out the dilemma. Now, learners, I want to tell you a story, and this story is in grade 7 English textbook. If you have it there, you can have it after I've told you the story. You can also read it for your own benefit. Well, if you don't have the story, if you don't have the book, you can wait until school to open so that you get a copy and read for your benefit. I hope you listen keenly to note these specific characteristics plus the life experiences for your own betterment. Welcome as I narrate you the story. Are you ready for the story? My good learners, story. Are you ready for the story? Hadithi. I hope you are saying hadithi, jo, rongo, jo, tam, kolea. Can you continue it? Once there lived a king called Doni. King Doni ruled Mumbo village with a lot of wisdom. He was respected by his people. In fact, people visited him for his wise advice. They even visited him so that he could help them solve disputes. King Doni was respected in such a way that even the kings from the neighboring kingdoms visited him for his advice. Now, it happened that the king wanted to take a bath in River Yikwe. So he went, and as he was taking a bath, his soldiers hid in the nearby bush. All of a sudden, they heard a cry of helplessness. They all came to the riverbanks to check what might went wrong with their king. The king told them that as I was bathing, my crown slid into the waters. The king then ordered them to call the horn blowers. You know a horn blower? A horn blower is someone who alerts the people whenever something has happened. In the past, people used to pass messages using the horns. Do you know a horn? What we get from the cows, bulls, on their heads. So the soldiers called the horn blowers, and once the horn blowers were there, they were then told by the king to alert the people to assemble at the palace, to come to the palace, for the king had a message to pass to his people, and the message was sudden, and the horn blowers blew the horns. And they blew the horn. They blew the horn until everyone got the message. Now, people then walked to the palace, the old and the young, women and children, even the crippled. Everyone, name them, everyone went to the king's palace. As they were waiting outside, they talked in hushed tones. They murmured among themselves, wondering what would make the king to call them in such a sudden way. A few moments, the king appeared. After exchanging greetings with his people, he broke the sad news. A calamity has just befallen my kingdom. As I was taking a bath in the river, my crown slid, and I'm now left without a crown. And as you all know, I can no longer rule. I therefore call upon any great swimmer to go and do a search for my crown in the river. Whoever becomes successful will be rewarded by being made the chief of Mungo village. Just then, people looked among themselves, and the great swimmers came forward. Now, it happened that Kuka, who was the king's son, was also a great swimmer. And his friend, Suka, who happened to be one of the king's herdsmen, was also a great swimmer. Now, the two friends then decided to work as a team. They went to the river, dived, swam, as others worked individually. And their search was successful. They then came out of the river, walked hand in hand and presented the crown to the king. The king then asked them, who between the two of you got the crown? And they both said at once, all of us got the crown. The king asked another question, who between the two of you saw the crown first? And they both answered in unison. They both answered in unison once again. We both saw the crown at once. Now, the king was left wondering. Should he declare his son Kuka as the chief, or should he declare his husband Suka? I hope, my dear learners, you have enjoyed the story. Now, let us now check the characteristics we wrote earlier, if they have been featured in the narrative I have just narrated to you. One was, the main character has to make a tough choice. And sure enough, King Doni had to make a tough choice. He was to choose between rewarding his son Kuka or his husband. Number two, none of the choice is easy to make. Remember the king's son and his husband. All of them worked as a team and they all got the crown. So whom do you give? Do I give my son? Do I give my husband? None of the choice is easy to make. And then the last one, it has a closing formula which points out the dilemma. Remember my last statement in the narrative. Now the king was left wondering, should I declare my son as the king, or should I declare my husband? That is the last statement that points out the dilemma. So it points out the dilemma. Now, another thing you are supposed to answer was relate the experiences in the narrative to our real life situations. Many a times we have leaders, and leaders do face a lot of situations, a lot of difficult situations, and they have to make a choice. For example, we have leaders who have to make choices. It is now upon them to choose wisely without favoring. Don't check that this is my relative, this is so and so, this is my friend. Just decide, have a sober decision, one that does not favor anyone. Another experience, I hope you are also noting and you are doing a comparison with mine. Another experience, when you are having a task, is it easier to do it as an individual, or when you are as a group, does it become much easier? The two, Suka and Kuka, worked as a team and they emerged victorious. The others who went individually, they did not get the crown. So what does that mean? When you are working as a team, the chances that you are going to be victorious are very high, unlike when you are working as an individual. And that is why nowadays you hear your teachers at school do tell you, group yourself, be in the group of 4, be in the group of 3, be in pairs, because when we come together, the work becomes easier as we share ideas, as we share experiences, unlike when we are working as an individual. Another experience that you can relate with us, I hope you are noting, make your list longer. And if you happen to be my learner at school, when schools open, I will check. And that is it for today's lesson.